and he would have just extended his jumper out a little bit. I mean, I think people really forget that when you look back, none of these guys shot threes. Back then, the coaches told you not to shoot the threes. You can go back, and this isn't even that long. As a Bulls fan, speaking of the Bulls, the coaches, not even 10 years ago, told Luol Deng to stop shooting threes. Take 2 feet in, take a couple steps in, and shoot just inside the arc. That's your shot. Stop shooting threes. Coaches told him that. Now that would seem insane. That would seem so retrograde and insane. And yet back then, even 10 years ago, that was the norm. And so for Jordan, who played even longer, it's just incredible to think. Imagine if he had a 3-point shot with all the other stuff he had going in his game, he would have been even more unstoppable. So that kind of jumped out to me. Watching him shoot those mid-range shots and how smooth he was. Imagine him with like a pull-up 3, just raining down fire the way that some of the guys now do. It's incredible. But yeah, I mean, what an incredible team. What an incredible player. And you mentioned it, Scottie Pippen too. Just unbelievable duo.
Yeah, and I don't think Michael, he might have won 1 or 2 without Scottie, but the fact that they won 6 and 8 years together just makes that group that much special. You know, you had Rodman there for the last 3 or whatever, and I'm excited because I think episode 3 is going to have a little bit of Rodman in it, so that should be fun. But just one more quick thing on Scottie, because you segued back to him. You know, for him to be undervalued the way that he was just leads me to believe, like, it was not a player-driven league back then. Can you imagine a player of Scottie Pippen's ilk making like $2 million a year, like $2.5 million a year at the prime of his career? There would have been a strike. The players union would have went absolutely ballistic. And the thing is too, like, I'm sure Pippen is well off royalties and things like that set for life. But can you imagine the endorsements he would be getting if he was playing in today's game, the sneaker deals? And on top of a much more lucrative NBA deal. I mean, this guy kind of got he kind of got ripped off a little bit. I was going to say shafted, and then ended up sounding like a Russian Mr. Clean. But yeah, man, like Scottie, what he went through would not have flied at all in today's NBA.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Scottie that's so interesting is just that it's funny. But, and I try not to get into these rabbit holes too much, but there is a part of you when you really watch and you say, is it more likely that we'll see another Michael Jordan or that we'll see another Scottie Pippen? And the average person will never see another Michael Jordan, but look at all the guys who tried. I mean, Kobe Bryant did an awfully good Michael Jordan impression at points of his career. I mean, he obviously wasn't Mike, but he did a lot. I don't know who is ever going to get to Scottie Pippen's level. I mean, there's a point where you almost say like, oh, LeBron's got a little bit of that Scottie Pippen, but he's just a totally different player. And I don't know if we'll ever see that guy again. So you're right. He's underappreciated even now. Just an amazing player though. And I mean, I'm just so excited. Any final thoughts before we move on to the NFL draft?
So I had in the notes here about Jerry Krause being pegged as a villain. Should Reinsdorf take any blame for not jumping in on what was going on with, you know, the contracts and the unhappiness and how Phil Jackson didn't want to be anywhere near Krause. But I feel like we should let that marinate a couple more episodes and kind of see where this leads, because maybe we'll have a clearer answer after the documentary. Just one quick thing before we get to the draft is Draymond Green did an after show with Matt Carter. And he made a comparison from the 1997-98 Bulls to last season's Warriors that lost to the Raptors in the finals, lost Kevin Durant to the Achilles injury, lost Clay to a torn ACL. But he claimed that the season was kind of slighted because the quote-unquote elephant in the room was Durant's uncertain future and the fact that everyone in the media was asking everyone but KD because he wasn't giving a straight answer. And it kind of affected the team a little bit. And this is where I'm going to call a little BS, because injuries happen in sports. Clay and KD don't go down. The Raptors do not win that championship. And they would have won 4 and 5 years, 3 in a row. Maybe Durant still leaves, but they would have an extra ring each. And I don't know how you can compare these two teams. I mean, I think that this Warriors team had more star power, but the 97-98 Bulls played more like a team. Because even while Pippen was out the first couple months of that season, you saw after the slow start that they were starting to get things together a little bit because Michael adjusted the way that he played. Rodman was picking up the slack. So I don't know if it's a fair comparison. I just want to get your thoughts on that before we move on.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I think a lot of what he was talking about is the handling of the situation. And I think that he's right in the sense that the Warriors situation, it did derail them more. And I think part of that is that Jordan in general was this sort of guy who was a great leader in crisis. He was this sort of figure who drew all the attention, for lack of a better way of saying it. He was a lightning rod at all times. Everyone wanted to be around him. Everyone wanted a piece of him, and he commanded everything. And what that did was it actually created kind of a perfect situation for Pippen. You notice that like when Pippen has to go and be the guy, he had his moments that they might talk about it, but he had obviously the drawn up play for Kukoc where he wouldn't go back in the game. He, as a kind of his own guy, he struggled. And when he was put in the position to like be that guy, sometimes he struggled in that leadership role. I mean, he did. And that's someone who really likes Scottie Pippen, but he struggled sometimes. Jordan was great at that. And the thing with the Warriors is they're much more kumbaya. They're a team with, outside of Draymond Green, you're kind of surprised to hear anything out of them. Kevin Durant has long been someone who's loath to give a quote during the season in a press conference. He's a guy who, outside, very thoughtful, but he's not a guy who's going to come out there and give you this really, Jordan-esque quotes. And I mean, one of the things that you kind of notice when you watch this is, man, Jordan was an all-time quote. He was the best at, if he didn't want to talk about something, he knew just how to do it. There was that great point in the show. They go, "You going to ask me about Scottie, or you going to ask me about the game?" And he does that like little MJ smile. He does the
was still so nice to the media though. Like he could have went off on them in that moment. I'm sure he was fuming. I mean, Michael seems like an emotional guy, especially when the Monstars invaded Looney Tunes. I wouldn't want to mess with Michael Jordan, but the fact that he was so diplomatic in that era where he was the most famous athlete living, one of the most famous people, and he was still so for the fact that he, was very diplomatic in a time of, I don't want to say crisis, given what's going on today, but just in a trying time for that organization was commendable.
And he also, he took the mantle on. Like they talk about it. He was like, I don't want to lose. I don't care. I don't want to lose these games. And then look at what the Warriors did. I mean, the Warriors just didn't, I hate to say it, but they really didn't care. They didn't try. And Draymond Green came out and said it right there. They're like, there were games where we said we would lock in and then we'd win by 30 points. I mean, he came out and said we weren't giving maximum effort every game. And we know that. And that would be completely anathema to what Michael Jordan believes. He talked about it throughout the documentary. He hated losing. He hated the culture of losing. When he had a freaking broken bone in his foot, he said, I'm going to keep playing, and I don't want you to put me on a minutes restriction. I want to win games. I want to make the playoffs. Basically, screw our draft pick. I want this playoff game. And then he went out and dropped 63 on debatably the greatest team of all time. So, I mean, it's just this incredible kind of, to me, contrast. You have this Warriors team that, they're incredibly talented. In my opinion, quite possibly the best team of all time. I mean, you're talking about two of the all-time 25, two of the top 25 easily. And they have a chance to go even higher.
It's the same about Michael and Scottie.
Exactly. But they also have Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and Andre Iguodala and a host of other kind of bench guys on those teams. I mean, there's just an insane amount of talent on those teams. And yet, during the regular season, they won less games, Jason. Less games than the team without Durant. And it just tells you, like, the mental makeup of that team was just different. It wasn't Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, if he had that team, if you put Michael Jordan on that team and you took off one of those other guys, they wouldn't, I don't know if they would have lost 5 games. He would not have let them. If they had started coasting, he would have lost his mind. And that's the difference.
Yeah, and this is the thing too. It wasn't the last dance for the Warriors. Kerr came back. Curry and Thompson got hurt, but they'll be back. Draymond's back. They had D'Angelo Russell. They flipped them for Andrew Wiggins. They have a nice core. They'll be competing in the West next season. As great as Kevin Durant is, I mean, he's on my Nets now, and I love everything about that. But it's like the Bulls lost everybody after that year. That was like the start of the Elton Brand regime, okay? And I don't see how there's a comparison. It wasn't the last dance for the Warriors. It was the end of a dynasty. There's a difference. They have most of that organization intact. And they all don't hate Bob Myers the way Krause was thinking.
At least as far as we know.
So listen, I know this was just 2 parts, but the reason why I'm so excited about this documentary is because it's like watching your favorite movie. You know how it ends, and you can just enjoy the little things in between. Like, it's not like there's going to be a suspense, like, do they win the championship? No. They're hoisting that trophy at the end. So it's kind of cool to just see what happens in between, and that's why I'm so captivated by it.
So with that, Jason, let's move on to what is a little bit less predictable, and that is the 2020 NFL Draft. Dun, 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 dun. That was my impression of Monday Night Football music. So obviously, Jason, they have this draft extravaganza now. I sound like an old fogey when I say that now it's an extravaganza. They've split out the rounds. It's multiple days. It's a big event. And it is manna from heaven from sports fans because what are we watching right now? I was listening to something recently that people are betting on like Ukrainian table tennis because they're so lost for things to bet on. So it's great to have real sports. Let's just start with that. It is great to have real sports in some form or fashion, Jason. I think we should take a minute of silence just to say thank you to the sports gods for giving us something. Okay. So with that, Jason.
Thank you to our essential workers and healthcare workers, but to all the sports nuts out there, yes. Thank you. You had the WNBA draft. You had the Last Dance. It kind of feels like we're in a norm, but we're just missing baseball, the hockey playoffs, and, of course, our NBA playoffs. But first thing I'm sad about is, man, like, it was supposed to be in Vegas. Like, the Raiders are there now, and they were supposed to have, like, the Strip shut down, and players were going to go on boat by boat to the Bellagio fountains and walk a red carpet. And anyone that knows me knows I'm obsessed with Las Vegas. And, it would have been nice to see the Strip as a backdrop during this. But, hey, not complaining. Home, safe. We'll be watching it on TV.
Yep.
But it's just weird, like, you're going to have, like, this Zoom call, but with, like, 50 other people, whether it's GMs or whatever. And then those GMs are going to have other video conferences, which is like a virtual war room. So, As I said at the top of the show, Ben, this is going to be unlike any draft we've ever seen because it's all virtual. And you're not going to be able to see, like, the reactions of the players, like their lifelong dreams coming true. Everything's going to be –
We'll see. We never know. The wonders of technology. I mean, we had a horse tournament off of people's like smartphones, basically. So who knows? But
let's tell me if Joe Burrow goes #1 overall, they're going to get a hologram of him on ESPN going up and shaking the hologram Roger Goodell's hand.
It'll be Tupac, not Roger Goodell. Jason, don't be silly. No, but let's talk about this, Jason. So what is the impact? I mean, I think there's a lot of people talking about this. Okay. Now these teams, they don't get all the medical reports. They don't get to do as much of the workouts. There's not as many pro days, all this stuff. And what it means to me is that they're actually going to have to focus on football. These GMs are actually going to have to watch the tape and base it more on the tape than on all the things that they like, that he had a good handshake, that you like the color of his eyes, that he likes the same ice cream as you. Those things kind of go out the window because you don't get a chance to meet these kids before you draft them. I am cautiously optimistic. I think one of the impacts is going to be that we might actually see better drafting than usual because it's less on gut feel and more on actual results and kind of the systems they've designed. What do you think are the impacts of this going virtual, Jason?
So before I get into that, I will say the one saving grace, Ben, is that the combine was held in full, right? So they got the 40-yard dashes in, the vert jumps, the cone shuttle runs, the bench press, and they were able to meet with some players in person, right? But then there were no visits to team facilities.